You're tuning in to the Cyber Hub and CISO Talk podcast, Veteran November series that honors the brave men and women who serve this nation by sharing their stories of service. Each year, for the entire month of November, we publish a daily podcast about these veterans. Buckle up and get ready for Veteran November. And now your host, James Azar.
What is happening, people? Welcome to the Veteran November Cyber Hub podcast and CISO Talk Meshup. So these are two separate podcasts. They're all together this month. So every episode goes on both channels. If you have not subscribed to either one or both, please make sure to do so right now. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. It's a very, very special one. We publish these episodes daily for the entire month of November, Monday through Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So tune in to that. Make sure to subscribe to YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and any one of your favorite podcast listening platforms. Go check that out. On top of Veteran November, we still have our usual cybersecurity content each and every single day as well. Josh Copeland, welcome to the show, my man. And for those who don't know, Josh is the current SOC manager at AT&T and a cybersecurity practitioner. Welcome to the program, Josh.
Thanks for having me, James.
It's a pleasure having you. Let's kind of kick this off. Let everyone know, what branch of the service did you serve in?
I was in the United States Air Force, Navy Marine brat. So obviously I had to do better than my parents and join the Air
Force. How long were you in the Air Force for?
I did 20 years. I retired out.
Wow. So you went in at 18, came out 20 years later.
Yes, sir.
Well done, sir. What'd you do in the Air Force? Was it just one position, or did you do a multitude of jobs in your time enlisted?
I started off my career in logistics, doing supply type stuff, taking boxes, driving forklifts, transitioned over into IT and then into cybersecurity by the time I retired.
Wow. So you kind of did the whole journey from enlisting all the way out to from a job perspective, right? From just kind of what the Marine Corps calls a grunt, but in the Air Force, there's no such thing because you're still in an air-conditioned warehouse. Yeah, totally. So, Josh, to me, it's very interesting when people enlist, right? Because the story of the enlistment is very interesting. Tell us about why you decided to enlist in the military and kind of what was your motivation behind it.
Well, for me, military is really my family business. I'm fourth generation military. My dad was a Vietnam era vet. My mom served throughout the 80s. My grandfather was a Navy World War II vet. His father was in World War I. And then before that, Civil War, all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So it's kind of just been the thing that, our family does. We serve our country and, do that honorably and then try to serve our communities when we leave the service.
So, talk a little bit about that family tradition for us. You're talking about almost every single major conflict the U.S. has ever been in, including the Civil War, where your family's had a part in it. Did you feel like you were continuing family tradition, or did it mean more to you than just, I'm following my family's footsteps?
Well, there's definitely a bit of both in the equation. Okay. There is the continue the family legacy, continue to serve, and contribute back to a country that's given my family so much since the very beginning of the country. But then there's also that personal part of I needed to do something for my country. It's a land of opportunity, and if I'm able to give a portion of my life, whether that's 4 years, 20 years, or 30, that's something that I need to do for myself.
Interesting. That's. Thank you so much for sharing that. When you look at the military, I think the military is one of the greatest incubators. It's the best university. They take young men and women and they take young boys and young girls and they turn them into men and women. And there's a lot that goes in there. If you look back at your 20 years in the service and you could pinpoint maybe one or two skills that the military taught you that have been instrumental in everything, that kind of goes on in your life, what would those be?
two very important skills that the Air Force and the military as a whole gave me that made it where I'm successful now. And that's be a voracious learner and be absolutely flexible. Things are never going to go the way that you planned it. Be able to adapt, overcome, and you can do that by educating yourself, by being able to soak up all that knowledge and all the things that are around you, be able to ingest that and then use that as decision points to when things don't go the way that you initially planned.
When you talk about being a learner and constantly learning, you did a bunch of different jobs while you were in the Air Force. And it's kind of a curve, right? From being kind of a forklift operator to going to IT, those don't exactly mix. What was that transition within jobs like in the military?
It's like any other transition. You have that crawl, walk, run mentality that the military teaches. You're not going to change jobs and do something new and be the very best. But the important thing is to educate yourself and go through that progression. One of the famous military idioms is failure is your first attempt to learn. That is absolutely true. Is you're going to fail while you're learning. If you don't fail, you're not really accountable. So with that whole process, you've just got to educate and apply.
That's magnificent. So talk to me a little bit about what does America symbolize to you? What does this country mean to you when you see it based, on the service that you had with the country?
It's really two things: freedom and opportunity. America is one of the few countries where everyone has an opportunity to be great. There are a plethora of paths to do so, whether you come from a very poor background or you come from a very posh and well-off. There's opportunities for everyone. And with that, it's just a matter of motivating yourself and taking those opportunities to be a better person.
So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the end of your service, the transition to civilian life. Talk a little bit about what was that transition like for you, and maybe what's one key takeaway? What's one thing that you learned from it that you'd want to pass on to maybe someone who's listening who might be transitioning out shortly?
Biggest thing you can do is network. There's stats out there that up to 75% of all available jobs are not listed out on any job boards or any recruiting site. It's all you have to know somebody to get into that job. Every job I've had since the military has been because I've known someone in that company who's advocating, which has been a fantastic way to get into companies and progress through those organizations, because at that point you're a known quantity and they're more likely to hire you. I try to do that myself. People that I served with, get them connected with the right folks and hopefully get them jobs that position them to where they need to be when they leave the service, whether it's after 2 years, 10 years, or 20 or 30.
What was the transition like? 20 years in the military is 20 years with a sense of order, sense of rules, right? Like it's a different mentality than maybe a corporate or, kind of like the civilian life. What was that transition like for you? What did you do to prepare yourself kind of from going from the Air Force to being a civilian?
A lot of it was just changing mentality. It took me at my first job 3 months before I routinely answered the first. I played sports in high school, did military for 20 years, and I was always just called by my last name. So people would say, "Hey, Josh, look at this," and it completely blew my mind that they were talking to me. Even getting dressed in the morning, in the military, you know exactly what you're going to wear. There's a big document that's about this thick that tells you exactly what to wear, how to dress, and having the freedom to pick your own clothes was, kind of scary for a little bit. So it was a process of, figuring out what I'm going to be when I'm not, Master Sergeant Copeland.
What was it difficult for you? Kind of like those first 2-3 months out of the military as you were kind of in civilian? Did you feel kind of like caught in like a deer in the headlights type of thing? Or did you find it be pretty smooth because, your family heritage or so?
I was fortunate. I had a very, very smooth transition. I had a job lined up well before my retirement. I was able to start my job while I was on terminal leave. So that created a very smooth transition. And because of the organization I was going with was very veteran heavy, it created a nice mix of being in the military to being in a corporate job that's also around a lot of before going off into the world of typical civilian.
That's awesome. So, as we kind of look at transitioning out and kind of, going into the civilian role, did you find that the skills kind of like that transition period actually really helped you? Like, were you able to get the maximum value out of it?
Oh, absolutely. Transitioning and that transition period was absolutely critical to my success because it allowed me to successfully go from being a member of the United States military to being somebody who is here doing a job for an organization that is not as rigidly defined as the military. That's a different mindset.
Indeed, it is. As we kind of wrap up the interview, I wanted to ask you, one of my favorite questions to ask vets whenever I meet them. One of my favorite questions to get as a vet is, what's the one thing you loved about your military service? Because I think there's a lot of ups and downs being in the service, but there's always one thing that always sticks with you. What's that for you?
For me, it was the brother and sisterhood of being a member of the United States military.
Yeah.
There is an inherent kinship, no matter what branch you are, what AFSC, MOS, NEC that you are. Everyone wearing a uniform has an instant bond. And there's a level of mentorship and followership that is inherent to that when something happens, we all lean in together. And that is my most cherished memory of being.
That's awesome. Josh, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I know we all appreciate your service. Even though it's the Air Force, it's still service. So Air Force is kind of like, people who served in the service will laugh at that joke. Other people will be like, why are you making fun of the Air Force? We're not. Everyone saw the airplanes taking off in the intro video. If you haven't seen that, that's really, really cool. Fighter jets taking off is one of my favorite things on the planet. I don't think there's anything more exhilarating than watching those like fighter jets take off.
B-52s. B-52s are more exhilarating.
Never seen that.
Come down to Barksdale. I'll show you B-52 taking.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to do that now. All right, folks, that's it for another episode of Veteran November. We publish these episodes daily for the entire month of November at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tune in. Make sure to subscribe. Follow our YouTube channel at CyberHub Podcast, or follow us on any one of our podcast channels on your favorite podcast listening platform. You can check out CyberHub Podcast or CISO Talk. Catch them both. You can also catch all of our other content there as well. Thank you to Mr. Copeland for being with us here today. I'm grateful that you've taken the time. Folks, that's it for us. We'll see you again tomorrow with more. Till then, cheers and have a great rest of your day, and God bless the USA.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.